The acrid stench of burnt circuitry and cheap synthetic alcohol permeated the dingy black market station. James stood his ground, his bulky black combat armor gleaming under the flickering neon lights as he faced down the gray-skinned alien, Traer. The technological artifact in question, a quantum phase modulator, lay between them on the scratched metal counter. "Look, Croth," James growled, his thick dark beard failing to hide his scowl. "We both know this tech's worth at least 50,000 credits. You're trying to screw me over." The bald alien merchant's multifaceted eyes narrowed. 30,000, final offer. His gravelly voice carried the hint of a smirk. James's hand instinctively tightened on his rifle. "I pulled this from a Class 4 restricted zone. Lost 2 good men getting it. This isn't some knockoff piece of junk." Croth's gray skin rippled with amusement. "Perhaps we could, sweeten the deal?" He gestured to a side door. "I have something that might interest a man of your tastes." James's eyes narrowed. "I don't deal in." "Just look," Croth interrupted, pressing a button. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a striking figure that made James's breath catch. A humanoid woman with violet skin and flowing white hair stood there, her curves accentuated by a form-fitting outfit that left little to the imagination. Her eyes, a mesmerizing shade of silver, met his with an intensity that seemed to pierce right through him. "Finest stock from the Centauri raids," Croth said proudly. "Pure Etherian worth 20,000 alone. She's yours, plus 30,000 credits." James felt his jaw clench. "I don't deal in slaves." "Then consider it a rescue," Croth chuckled. "You get your credits plus the satisfaction of freeing her. Everyone wins." The woman's eyes never left James's face. There was something in that gaze, not fear or submission, but a calculating intelligence that made him pause. James ran a hand through his styled dark hair. "Fine, but I want it in writing that she's free the moment the transfer's complete." Croth's smile widened. Of course, though I doubt you'll want to let this one go once you—" "Just get the damn paperwork," James snapped as Croth shuffled away. James approached the woman. "I'm not your new master," he said quietly. "Once this is done, you're free to go wherever you want." A slight smile curved her full lips. "My name is Kara," she said, her voice carrying an exotic accent that sent shivers down his spine. "And I think I'll stay with you for now." Something about her tone made James wonder if he'd just been played. But before he could pursue that thought, Croth returned with the documents. Minutes later, the deal was done. As they walked away from the trading post, Kara's stride matching his perfectly, James couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become significantly more complicated. He had no idea how right he was. James's ship, the Iron Spirit, was a modified Turan Vanguard-class corvette, small enough to avoid unnecessary attention but large enough to accommodate a crew of 6, though he usually flew solo. As they approached the docking bay, Kara's silver eyes drank in every detail of the vessel's sleek lines. "She's beautiful," Kara murmured, running her delicate violet fingers along the hull's dark metal surface. "Turan engineering at its finest." James raised an eyebrow. "Now you know your ships, among other things." She replied with a mysterious smile that made his pulse quicken. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and James let her inside. The ship's interior was Spartan but well-maintained, with state-of-the-art equipment carefully integrated into its military-grade framework. "Welcome aboard," he said, removing his bulky armor pieces and storing them in a wall-mounted rack. Underneath, he wore a form-fitting black flight suit that did little to hide his muscular frame. "Make yourself comfortable while I get us clearance to depart." Kara's gaze lingered on him appreciatively. "Oh, I intend to." In the cockpit, James tried to focus on the pre-flight checks, but his mind kept wandering to his unusual passenger. Something about her didn't add up. Slaves typically showed signs of mistreatment or at least fear, but Kara carried herself with an almost regal confidence. When he returned to the main cabin, he found her examining his collection of rare books, actual paper ones, with obvious fascination. "These must have cost a fortune," she said, carefully turning a page of an ancient Earth novel. Most people think I'm crazy for keeping physical books on a spaceship. Most people are fools. He replaced the book with careful precision. Knowledge should be treasured in all its forms. James leaned against the door frame, studying her. You're not what you seem, are you? None of us are. Kara turned to face him, and the ship's soft lighting caught the silvery highlights in her white hair. But you're right. I'm not what that merchant believed me to be. And what did he believe? That I was just another captured prize. She moved closer, her movements fluid and graceful. He never questioned why an Etherian would allow herself to be sold without resistance.
James' combat instinct en gold.
My people possess certain abilities. She raised her hand, and a faint purple glow emanated from her fingertips. That merchant's security systems didn't disable themselves by accident. You wanted to be sold. The realization hit James like a plasma bolt. To me, specifically. I needed transportation off that station, and you? She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her violet skin. You have a reputation, a man of honor in a profession not known for it. Someone who would intervene if he saw a slave being sold. You played me, he said, but there was more admiration than anger in his voice. I prefer to think of it as arranging an introduction. Her silver eyes sparkled with mischief. Though I must admit, the reality exceeded my expectations. The ship's computer chimed, indicating they'd received clearance for departure. James should have gone to the cockpit immediately, but he found himself rooted to the spot, captivated by her presence. You still haven't told me who you really are. No, I haven't. She reached up, her fingers barely brushing his bearded jaw. But I will after we're safely away from this station and its prying eyes. The touch sent electricity through his body, and James had to force himself to step back. I should get us underway. Of course. Her knowing smile suggested she was well aware of the effect she had on him. I'll prepare us some refreshments. Your galley is fully stocked. Yes, help yourself. He turned towards the cockpit, then paused. Just, no more surprises for now. Now, where would be the fun in that? She laughed, the sound like crystal chimes in the recycled ship air. As James guided the iron spirit away from the station, his mind raced. Everything about this situation screamed trap, yet his instincts, which had kept him alive through countless dangerous situations, told him Kara wasn't a threat, at least not to him. The ship cleared the station's gravity well, and James engaged the FTL drive. The stars stretched into lines of light around them as they entered hyperspace. Beautiful, Kara's voice came from behind him. She'd entered the cockpit silently, carrying 2 steaming mugs of what smelled like real coffee, not the synthetic stuff. Where did you? He started to ask about the coffee, but stopped when he saw what she was wearing. She'd found one of his spare flight suits, but somehow, the utilitarian garment looked entirely different on her curves. Your environmental controls are set to human preferences, she explained, handing him a mug. While my previous outfit was aesthetically pleasing, it wasn't particularly practical. James took a sip of the coffee, definitely real, and better than anything he'd had in months. You're full of surprises. You have no idea. She settled into the co-pilot seat with natural grace. Now, shall I tell you about why the Etherian royal family's only heir would arrange to be sold as a slave? James nearly choked on his coffee. The iron spirit drifted through hyperspace, its quantum engines humming a soft lullaby against the vast silence. In the ship's small but comfortable lounge, James sat across from Kara, still processing her revelation about being the Etherian heir. So, he said, setting down his second cup of coffee, you're telling me that I technically bought a princess with a quantum phase modulator? Kara's melodious laughter filled the cabin. When you put it that way, it does sound rather absurd. She leaned forward, her silver eyes twinkling. Though I must say, as far as purchases go, you got quite a bargain. I'm still trying to figure out why. James ran a hand through his dark hair. The heir to the Etherian throne could have hired any premium transport service in the galaxy. Why the elaborate ruse? Because, dear James, she traced the rim of her cup with a delicate violet finger. I needed someone who couldn't be bought. Someone whose moral compass pointed true north, even in the darkest reaches of space. You got all that from my reputation. I got all that from watching you turn down 3 separate slave trades before mine. She set her cup down. Did you think I chose that station at random? James felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. You were testing me? Among other things. Her gaze traveled appreciatively over his muscular frame. Etherians believe that character reveals itself in small moments, when we think no one is watching. And what else did you see in these small moments? A man who maintains a library of physical books in an age of digital convenience. She gestured around them. A warrior who keeps his ship spotless, not out of vanity but respect for his tools. Someone who could afford better quarters but chooses to live simply. You're making me sound like some kind of saint. Oh, far from it. Her smile turned playful. I also saw a man who can outdrink a Centaurian dock worker, outshoot a Martian gunslinger, and outcurse a Jovian freight captain. James couldn't help but laugh. Been doing your homework, haven't you? Thoroughly. She stood with fluid grace and moved to the viewport, watching the streaks of hyperspace light. My people have a saying, know the soul before you trust the sword. James joined her at the viewport, careful to maintain a respectful distance despite his growing desire to close it. And what does my soul tell you, princess? Please. She turned to face him, close enough that he could see flecks of starlight in her eyes. Call me Kara. And your soul? She reached up, her fingers hovering just above his bearded cheek without quite touching. Your soul tells me that humans are far more fascinating than any of our scholars ever imagined. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. James found himself drowning in those silver eyes, fighting the urge to pull her closer. You know, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Where I come from, it's considered bad form to psychoanalyze someone you've just met. And where I come from, she countered, it's considered wasteful to deny obvious attraction. Before James could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. He reluctantly pulled away from Kara and rushed to the cockpit, dropping into the pilot's seat with practiced ease. Proximity alert in hyperspace, Kara followed, settling into the co-pilot's chair. That shouldn't be possible. A lot of impossible things seem to happen around you, James noted, checking the readings. We've got a ship matching our course. They're good, staying just at the edge of sensor range. Not pursuers, Kara said with certainty. My departure was completely secret. Even my own guards think I'm in deep meditation at our mountain sanctuary. Could be random pirates in hyperspace. She shook her head. No, this is something else. James studied the sensor readings more carefully. The way they're trailing us, it's almost like they're waiting for something, or hurting us somewhere. Kara's expression turned thoughtful. What's the nearest system along our current trajectory? James pulled up the NAV charts. Epsilon Eidani. Mostly mining colonies and, oh, what's this? There's a deep space research station there, supposedly abandoned after the quantum wars. But he pulled up some additional data. I've heard rumors about black market tech dealers using it as a base. The same ones you sold artifacts to before.
No.
These are different. Dangerous? He glanced at her. The kind that wouldn't think twice about ransoming an Etherian princess. Kara's face hardened into something more regal, more dangerous. Then perhaps it's time I showed you what an Etherian princess can really do. I thought you already had. Her answering smile was predatory. Oh, James, that was just flirting. This purple energy began crackling around her fingers. This is something else entirely. The Iron Spirit's engine room thrummed with barely contained power as James and Kara prepared their countermeasure against their mysterious pursuers. Purple energy crackled around Kara's hands as she interfaced with the ship's systems, her consciousness merging with the quantum drive in ways that defied human understanding. Your ship's neural pathways are remarkably responsive, she murmured, her silver eyes glowing with an inner light, almost as if they were designed for Etherian integration. James monitored the power readings, trying not to be distracted by how the energy play highlighted her elegant features. The previous owner mentioned something about custom modifications, never said where they came from. Fortunate coincidences, Kara smiled, knowing it was anything but. With these systems, I can create a quantum shadow, make it appear we've dropped out of hyperspace while we actually continue on a different vector. And our friends back there, they'll follow the shadow, thinking they've herded us exactly where they wanted. Right into our trap. James found himself mesmerized by her confidence. This supposed slave he'd rescued was proving to be the most capable partner he'd ever worked with. You've done this before? A princess must know how to handle difficult situations. She glanced at him through lowered lashes. Though I must admit, the company makes this particular situation far more enjoyable. The air between them charged with more than just quantum energy. James stepped closer, ostensibly to check a readout. Even with mysterious pursuers trying to capture you? Especially then. Her fingers brushed his as they reached for the same control panel. Danger has a way of clarifying things. Such as, how much I appreciate having a strong, capable human by my side. She turned to face him fully, their bodies mere inches apart. One who sees me as more than just a title or a prize. James's heart hammered against his ribs. And how do you think I see you? Why don't you show me? The ship's warning system chose that moment to chime, indicating their pursuers were closing in. With remarkable restraint, they both turned back to their tasks. Quantum shadow ready, Kara reported, her voice husky. On your mark. James took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. Execute in 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered as Kara's powers engaged. On the sensors, their signature split, one continuing toward the research station, the other veering off into deep space. Their pursuers, as predicted, followed the shadow. It worked. Kara's excitement was contagious. They took the bait. Now comes the fun part. James plotted a new course. We loop around through the Oort cloud, catch them from behind while they're searching the station. Brilliant strategy. Kara's admiration was palpable. Though we have several hours before we need to execute that part of the plan. Their eyes met, the air between them electric with possibility. Several hours, James repeated, his voice rough. Any suggestions on how to pass the time?
Kara stepped closer.
Her violet skin seeming to glow in the engine room's dim light. I can think of a few activities worthy of a princess and her gallant rescuer. I thought you arranged all this, he reminded her, though his hands were already reaching for her. Perhaps I arranged to be rescued by exactly the right man. Her fingers traced the contours of his chest through his light suit. One who would see past the deception to the truth beneath. And what truth is that? That sometimes, she whispered, pressing against him, a princess needs to be seen as simply a woman, and sometimes, a mercenary can be every inch the prince she's been waiting for. Their lips met in a kiss that sent quantum energy crackling through the ship's systems. All pretense of resistance melted away as they finally surrendered to the attraction that had been building since their first meeting. In that moment, titles and background ceased to matter. They were simply a man and a woman finding something extraordinary in each other's arms. Hours later, as they lay entwined in James's quarters, Kara traced lazy patterns on his chest. You know, she mused, this isn't exactly how Etherian courtship usually progresses. James chuckled, running his fingers through her starlight hair.
No elaborate rituals, no formal declarations.
Oh, there are usually dozens. She propped herself up to look at him, her silver eyes sparkling. Though I must say, I prefer this human approach much more. The direct, speaking of direct. James checked the ship's chronometer. We should be approaching our ambush point soon. Kara sighed contentedly, stretching in a way that made James's pulse quicken all over again. Duty calls. Though after we deal with our pursuers, we really must discuss the proper protocol for a human mercenary courting an Etherian princess. I thought we just did. Her laughter, rich and genuine, filled the cabin. Oh, my dear James, this was just the beginning. The week following their initial intimate encounter transformed life aboard the Iron Spirit in ways James never could have imagined. The ship's corridors, once cold and utilitarian, now hummed with an energy that had nothing to do with its quantum drive. Every shared glance, every accidental brush in the narrow passages, carried electric potential. Kara had integrated herself seamlessly into the ship's daily operations, her Etherian abilities enhancing systems James hadn't even known could be improved. But it was her presence in his personal life that truly revolutionized his world. "Your coffee, Captain?" she purred one morning, setting down his mug in the cockpit. She wore another of his flight suits, though she'd modified this one to better suit her figure. The way she moved made even standard-issue clothing look like royal attire. "You know," James said, accepting the drink, "you don't have to call me Captain." "Oh, but I like to." Her silver eyes sparkled with mischief. "Especially since I outrank you in every other way." He caught her hand before she could withdraw it. "Is that so, Your Highness?" The title, once formal, had become something of a private joke between them, especially given how thoroughly they dispensed with formality in private. "Indeed." She settled into his lap with practiced ease, making navigation considerably more challenging. "Though I must say, you've shown remarkable command abilities in certain situations." James's hands found their way to her hips. "I aim to please." "That you do." She leaned in for a kiss that threatened to derail their entire flight plan. The ship's proximity alert chose that moment to chime. "Saved by the bell," James murmured against her lips. "Postponed," Kara corrected, reluctantly sliding off his lap to check the sensors. Her expression turned serious. "We've got company. 3 ships coming out of hyperspace." James immediately switched to tactical mode, though his body still hummed from their interrupted moment. Configuration, standard pursuit formation. They're not even trying to hide their intentions. Her fingers danced over the controls, purple energy enhancing the sensor readings. "Wait, these energy signatures. They're Etherian. Your people. The Royal Guard." She bit her lip. "They weren't supposed to discover my absence for another week." James's hands tightened on the controls. "Options. We could run." Her silver eyes met his. Or we could face them together." She reached for his hand. "Show them that I've chosen my path and my partner." The word partner sent a warmth through James that had nothing to do with physical attraction. "You sure about this? There might be easier ways to introduce your new human boyfriend to the family." Her laughter filled the cockpit. "Boyfriend? Such a quaint human term." She squeezed his hand. "In Etherian culture, what we've shared, it's beyond any simple classification. We're quantum bound now." "That sounds serious." "It is." Her expression softened. "Our energies have merged in ways that can't be undone. Even if they wanted to separate us, they couldn't. Not without risking serious harm to both of us." James processed this information. "So, what you're saying is we're basically married by Etherian standards." "More than married." Purple energy sparkled around their joined hands. "We're soul-matched. It's incredibly rare, even among my people. The fact that it happened with a human." She smiled. "Well, let's just say it's going to cause quite a stir in the royal court." The approaching ships fired warning shots across their bow. "Speaking of stir," James said, "how do you want to handle this?" Kara's answer was to stand and pull him into a passionate kiss that left them both breathless. "First, we show them they can't separate us." Then, her hand drifted to her abdomen, in a gesture that made James's heart skip several beats. "Then we tell them about the air they're getting." James's eyes widened. "Your quantum-bound pairs are exceptionally fertile," she explained with a radiant smile, "and Etherian biology is efficient." Before James could fully process this world-changing information, the Royal Guard ships hailed them. "Ready to face your future," Captain? Kara's eyes sparkled with both challenge and affection. James pulled her close, one hand protectively covering hers on her abdomen. With you always. As they prepared to answer the hail, James reflected on how thoroughly his life had changed since accepting that fateful deal in the black market. He'd thought he was rescuing a slave, only to find himself bound to a princess in ways that transcended ordinary understanding. And now, with their child growing within her, their story was evolving into something even more extraordinary. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of the Etherian Royal Guard commander. James straightened, keeping one arm around Kara's waist, ready to face whatever came next. After all, he wasn't just a mercenary anymore. He was quantum-bound to an Etherian princess, soon to be the father of a half-human, half-Etherian royal heir. Life had become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more wonderful than he could have imagined. The Etherian Royal Guard commander's holographic image flickered before them, his silver-armored form imposing even in projection. His eyes widened at the sight of Kara, wrapped in James's protective embrace. "Your Highness," he began formally, then faltered at their obvious intimacy. "Princess Kara Ra, your father will—" "Can wait, Commander," Kara interrupted, her royal authority evident despite wearing a modified flight suit. "First, you will power down your weapon systems. I am not being held against my will. In fact," she turned to kiss James's bearded jaw, making the commander visibly uncomfortable, "I am exactly where I choose to be." James suppressed a smile at the commander's obvious distress. The man looked like he'd swallowed a quantum crystal. "But Your Highness, the protocols have already been superseded by a higher law." Kara's hand glowed purple as she raised it, energy swirling between her and James. "We are quantum-bound." The shock that rippled through the commander's bridge crew was almost comical. Several officers gasped, one actually fainted. "Impossible," the commander whispered. "With a human? Not only possible," Kara's smile turned mischievous, "but thoroughly confirmed through multiple interactions." James coughed to hide his laugh, remembering those confirmations with vivid clarity. The past week had been a revelation in more ways than one, each passionate encounter strengthening their quantum bond until their energies moved in perfect synchronization. Furthermore, Kara continued, her free hand drifting to her abdomen. "The royal lineage is already secured." This time, 3 more officers fainted. "Commander, there looked like he might join them." You're with child?" "A hybrid, the first human Etherian royal heir," Kara confirmed proudly, "which makes any discussion of separation not only impossible but potentially dangerous to the future of our people." James watched the commander process this information, noting how the man's tactical training warred with his ingrained prejudices. Finally, duty won out. "Your father must be informed immediately." "Agreed," Kara's tone softened, "but on our terms. We'll return to Etheria together, present ourselves properly." After James added firmly, "We deal with the people who were pursuing us before you arrived." This caught the commander's attention. "Pursuers? Someone tried hurting you." "Toward an abandoned research station," James explained. "We evaded them, but they're still out there." "Mercenaries," Kara suggested, hoping to capture an Etherian princess for ransom, though they got more than they bargained for. The commander's expression hardened. "This is now a matter of royal security. We'll escort you." "You'll support us," Kara corrected. "But we handle this our way. Consider it a test of my future consort's capabilities." James raised an eyebrow at consort, but kept his expression neutral. They could discuss titles later, preferably during one of their more intimate moments when Kara was more amenable to negotiation. "As you wish, Your Highness." There didn't look happy, but he had little choice. "We'll maintain distance but stay within support range." After ending the transmission, Kara turned into James's arms, pressing herself against him in a way that made tactical planning considerably more challenging. "Consort?" he asked, his hands automatically finding their way to her hips. "Would you prefer a prince consort?" Or perhaps royal pleasure, Captain. Now you're just making titles up. He groaned as she found a particularly sensitive spot on his neck. I'm a princess, she murmured against his skin. I can make up whatever titles I want, especially for the father of my child. The reminder of her pregnancy sent a surge of protective desire through him. Their quantum bond amplified the feeling, making Kara gasp as the sensation echoed between them. We should focus on our pursuers, he managed, though his hands were already sliding under her flight suit. We have time, she purred. The royal guard will warn us of any approach. Her fingers made quick work of his suit's fastenings. Besides, pregnant Etherian women have certain needs. Is that so? He lifted her onto the navigation console, tactical displays forgotten. And what does Etherian medical science say about satisfying those needs? Oh, it's highly recommended. Her silver eyes glowed with desire. Essential for proper quantum alignment, multiple times daily. Hours later, as they lay entwined in their quarters, Kara traced the energy patterns their passion had left glowing on James's skin. You know, the royal court is going to be scandalized by the human thing. Or the quantum bond. Or how thoroughly you've corrupted their princess. She smiled against his chest. They expected me to make a political match, strengthen traditional alliances. Instead, you ran away and got yourself bought by a mercenary. Best purchase ever made. She propped herself up to look at him. Though I should warn you, the formal presentation to my father will be intense. James pulled her closer. More intense than facing down 3 royal guard ships while announcing your pregnancy? Much. She kissed him softly. But first, we deal with our mysterious pursuers. Show my people exactly why their princess chose a human warrior as her mate. Any ideas on that front? Kara's smile turned predatory. Actually, yes. Remember how I modified the ship's quantum systems? Hard to forget, especially since you did it wearing that outfit. She swatted his chest playfully. Focus, Captain. Those modifications give us certain advantages, particularly when combined with our quantum bond. As she outlined her plan, James couldn't help but marvel at how thoroughly this woman had transformed his life. From a simple black market transaction to quantum-bound mates expecting a child, it was beyond anything he could have imagined. And somehow he knew the best was yet to come. The Iron Spirit's engine room pulsed with an ethereal purple glow as Kara channeled her energy through the modified quantum systems. Her pregnancy had only enhanced her abilities, the growing life within her adding new dimensions to her powers. Ready? She asked James, who stood at the tactical station, his hands hovering over the controls. Born ready. His confident grin made her heart flutter. Though I still can't believe we're actually using our quantum bond as a weapon system. Not just a weapon, Kara corrected, her silver eyes sparkling. Think of it as a dance. One where our pursuers are about to discover they're terribly outmatched. Their plan was audacious, using their intimate connection to create a quantum resonance field that would disable any ship that came too close. The Royal Guard vessels maintained their protective distance, their crew still adapting to the shocking revelations about their princess's chosen mate. Incoming, James announced as their sensors detected the pursuing ships emerging from hyperspace. 3 vessels, same configuration as before. Kara's hands moved in intricate patterns, purple energy flowing between her and the ship systems. Perfect, they're right where we want them. Through their quantum bond, James felt the surge of power building within her. Without conscious thought, he reached out, lending his own energy to strengthen hers. The sensation was intoxicating, like their most passionate moments amplified and focused into pure power. You know, he said, voice rough with both concentration and desire. If anyone had told me a month ago that I'd be using tantric energy to fight space pirates. Technically, it's quantum harmonic resonance, Kara corrected with a laugh. Though I must say, your contribution to building that energy has been exemplary. The pursuing ships moved into attack formation, unaware they were flying into a trap built from the most intimate form of energy in the universe. Now,
Kara Kemandid.
James triggered the modified weapons array just as Kara released their stored quantum energy. The result was spectacular. A wave of purple light erupted from the iron spirit, expanding in a perfect sphere. When it touched the enemy vessels, their systems went dark instantly. Direct hit, James crowed. Kara swayed slightly, the energy expenditure taking its toll. James was at her side instantly, supporting her with strong arms. Easy there, Your Highness. His concern flowed through their bond. You're not just channeling for yourself anymore. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, feeling their child's energy pulse in harmony with their own. We're fine. More than fine, actually. The baby seems to enjoy quantum manipulation as much as his mother does. James's eyes widened. You can tell already? Etherian women are very in tune with their children. She guided his hand to her stomach, letting him feel the subtle quantum resonance, especially when the father's energy is so compatible. The moment was interrupted by Commander There's voice over the comm. Your Highness, the enemy vessels are completely neutralized. Shall we move in to secure them? James kept his hand on Kara's abdomen as he responded. Affirmative, Commander, but maintain quantum shielding. We don't know what other surprises they might have. After coordinating with the Royal Guard for the capture of their pursuers, James and Kara retreated to their quarters. The energy expenditure had left them both charged in ways that demanded private attention. Hours later, as they lay in a satisfied tangle of limbs and quantum afterglow, Kara traced the energy patterns on James's chest. You're adapting to quantum manipulation remarkably well for a human. I have an excellent teacher. He caught her hand, kissing her fingertips. Though I think it's more about motivation than ability. Oh, her silver eyes sparkled with mischief. And what motivates you, Captain? Well, he rolled her over, pinning her beneath him. There's this incredibly sexy alien princess who keeps inviting me to quantum dance with her. Their laughter turned to sighs as they began another round of energy alignment. Later still, as they prepared to interrogate their captured pursuers, Kara helped James into his armor, ready to show these mercenaries why crossing an Etherian princess and her human mate was a terrible idea. Actually, James said, checking his weapons, I'm more interested in finding out who hired them. Someone knew enough about your movements to attempt an intercept. Kara's expression turned serious. You think there's more to this than simple opportunism? I think, he pulled her close, that someone powerful enough to track an Etherian princess might have opinions about her carrying a human's child. Let them object. Purple energy crackled around her fingers. They'll learn what happens when someone threatens my family. The possessive heat in her voice sent shivers down James's spine. This fierce, passionate woman had completely transformed his life, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Besides, she added with a predatory smile, I rather enjoy showing everyone exactly why I chose you. Is that what we're calling it now? He raised an eyebrow. Showing off. Among other things. She pressed against him, their quantum bond humming with shared energy. Now, shall we go intimidate some mercenaries? After you, Your Highness. As they headed to the interrogation chamber, James reflected on how thoroughly his life had changed since that fateful transaction in the black market. He'd gained not just a lover, but a partner, not just a child, but a future he never could have imagined. And somehow he knew their greatest adventures were still to come. 9 months after their fateful meeting in that dingy black market, James stood before the Etherian royal court, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the crystalline lights. The investigation of their would-be captors had revealed a conspiracy by conservative court factions to prevent the dilution of royal bloodlines. Their defeat, orchestrated through James and Kara's combined abilities, had transformed skepticism about their union into reverent awe. The great hall of the Etherian palace hummed with quantum energy, its crystal walls reflecting the combined power of hundreds of noble houses. Yet none shone brighter than the connection between the human warrior and his princess. You're thinking too loud, Kara whispered, her hand finding his. Her advanced pregnancy had only enhanced her beauty, her violet skin glowing with internal light. The formal royal gown she wore, designed to showcase both her status and her condition, made her look like a goddess incarnate. Just remembering how this all started, he murmured back. A quantum phase modulator and a slave trade. Best transaction you ever made. Her silver eyes sparkled with mischief. Best decision I ever made, he corrected, sending a wave of love through their bond that made her gasp softly. The High Chancellor approached, his ornate robes trailing behind him. The royal report recognizes the quantum bond between Princess Kara and James Felt of Earth. Furthermore, we acknowledge the unprecedented strength of their union and the unique gifts it promises for the next generation. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled nobles. The past months had seen numerous demonstrations of their combined powers, each more impressive than the last. Their ability to channel quantum energy through their intimate connection had revolutionized Etherian understanding of human potential. The Chancellor continued, "In light of these developments and with the blessing of His Majesty, we hereby bestow upon James Felt the title of Prince Consort and Guardian of the Quantum Realm." James felt Kara's pride and amusement flow through their bond. She'd been right about the titles, though Guardian of the Quantum Realm was a new one. The ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance expected of the Etherian court, but it was suddenly interrupted by Kara's sharp intake of breath. "Now?" James asked through their bond, feeling her first contraction. "Your son," she replied with a mental laugh, "has your sense of dramatic timing." The next hours passed in a blur of quantum energy and ancient birthing rituals. Etherian medicine, combined with their powerful bond, transformed what could have been a dangerous hybrid birth into something miraculous. James never left her side, their shared energy easing her labor. When she wasn't focused on bringing their child into the world, Kara took great delight in teaching him new aspects of their connection, turning even this intense experience into an opportunity for intimacy. "Only you," he said during a brief respite, "would use contractions as a chance for quantum foreplay." Etherian women," she panted, gripping his hand, "believe in making every moment count, especially with their quantum-bound mates." Their son entered the world in a flash of purple light that rippled through the entire palace. His skin was a lighter shade of violet than his mother's, his eyes a striking mix of silver and human hazel, but it was his quantum signature that drew gasps from the attending physicians. A perfect blend of human strength and Etherian power. One of them murmured. "He's beautiful," James whispered, cradling their son while sitting beside an exhausted but radiant Kara. "He's perfect," she agreed, reaching out to touch the baby's cheek. "Our little prince, born of a transaction that became a transformation." Speaking of transformations, James shifted the baby to one arm so he could reach into his ceremonial armor. "I've been waiting for the right moment to show you this." He pulled out a familiar device, the quantum phase modulator that had started it all. Kara's eyes widened. "You kept it. Had it modified." He handed it to her. "Look at the encryption signature." She examined it, then laughed with delight. "You encoded our quantum frequency into it. That's impossibly romantic for a former mercenary." "Well, I had this incredibly sexy alien princess teaching me about quantum harmonics." He leaned in to kiss her, their bond humming with renewed passion. Their son made a small noise, his tiny hands glowing with purple energy, already channeling. Kara noted proudly, "He'll be stronger than either of us. Poor royal court won't know what hit them. Poor universe won't know what hit it," she corrected, pulling him down for another kiss. As their family cuddled together in the royal birthing chamber, James reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From a simple business transaction to a love that transcended species. From a pretend slave to a quantum-bound princess. From a lone mercenary to a father and prince consort. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor and a flair for romance. "I love you," he sent through their bond. "I know," she replied with her characteristic sass. "I believe I purchased that love with a quantum phase modulator. Best deal ever made." "Best deal ever made," he agreed, their sun glowing contentedly between them as their quantum bond pulsed with promises of adventures yet to come. But even as they celebrated, the seeds of discontent were already sown within the royal court. The conservative factions, led by the High Chancellor, had not truly accepted the union. They viewed James as a dangerous outsider, a threat to the purity of their bloodline. They had only been biding their time, waiting for an opportunity to strike. That opportunity came during the formal presentation of the new prince to the assembled court. As Kara held their son aloft, a wave of quantum energy rippled through the hall, a demonstration of the baby's immense power. But this time, it was not just their family's energy that resonated. A surge of dark energy, corrupt and chaotic, clashed against their bond,
sending Kara staggering.
James reacted instantly, pulling her and their son close, his armor shimmering as he prepared to defend them. The High Chancellor stepped forward, his face contorted with hatred. This abomination must be stopped. He is not one of us, and neither is the human who defiles our princess. He raised a hand, and the hall filled with the chanting of the conservative nobles, their combined energy forming a quantum shield that separated James and Kara from the rest of the court. "You were never meant to rule, Kara," the Chancellor snarled. "Your weakness allowed this impurity to infect our bloodline. Today, we cleanse Etheria of your stain." James understood now. The mercenaries, the pursuit, the carefully orchestrated delays, it had all been a setup to isolate and eliminate them. Kara's eyes glowed with fury. "You betray your own people for your petty prejudices." She raised her hand, and the baby in her arms mirrored her movement, a spark of purple energy igniting around his tiny fingers. "You cannot contain us, old man. Our bond is stronger than any shield you can conjure." The hall erupted in chaos as James and Kara, their combined power surging, fought back against the conservatives. The energy clashes shattered the crystal walls, sending shockwaves through the palace. It was a battle for their lives, for the future of their family, for the soul of Etheria. With each strike, James learned more about Kara's powers, and she, in turn, learned how to harness the raw strength of his human heritage. Their styles, once so different, merged into a seamless dance of power and precision. Kara's quantum abilities allowed her to manipulate energy on a grand scale, creating shields, deflecting attacks, and launching focused bolts of purple energy. James, relying on his military training, moved with speed and ferocity, his armor deflecting enemy attacks while he used his energy rifle to pick off the opposing nobles. Their son, cradled safely in Kara's arms, seemed to amplify their powers, his tiny hands glowing brighter with each passing moment. The battle raged on, the combined forces of the conservatives gradually weakening against the raw, untamed power of the family's bond. Finally, with a coordinated strike, James and Kara broke through the Chancellor's defenses, their combined energy blasting him across the hall, ending the coup. When the smoke cleared, the hall was in ruins, the floor littered with debris and the bodies of fallen nobles. The remaining conservatives, defeated and humbled, lowered their weapons. Kara, though exhausted, held their son aloft, her eyes radiating with pride and defiance. "You tried to divide us, to destroy what we have built," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "But you have failed, for our bond is stronger than your petty ambitions. We are one now, and we will rule together." The remaining nobles, finally realizing the truth of her words, knelt before her and her family. In the aftermath of the rebellion, James and Kara set about rebuilding the damaged palace and restoring order to the Etherian court. They implemented reforms that championed unity and acceptance, ensuring that the same prejudiced actions never threatened their people again. James, now formally recognized as Prince Consort and Guardian of the Quantum Realm, found himself more at home in the Etherian world than he ever thought possible. He advised Kara on matters of strategy and diplomacy, his military background proving invaluable in the new era of peace. And Kara, in turn, trusted him completely, their bond of love and respect growing deeper each day. Together, they raised their son, teaching him the values of courage, loyalty, and compassion, guiding him to master the incredible powers that flowed through his veins. As their son grew, they knew that their family would not only lead Etheria into a new era of prosperity and peace, but also represent the dawning of a new age, a universe where differences were celebrated rather than feared. As they sat by their son's bedside one night, James looked at Kara, their quantum bond humming with the same quiet intensity it had the first moment they touched. "You know," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, "I never thought I could find this."
Kara smiled.
Her silver eyes shining in the soft light. "Neither did I, my love. But some purchases, as it turns out, are worth more than any number of credits, titles, or even universes." They embraced, their son cradled between them, their love a beacon of hope in a universe filled with uncertainty. The universe had a way of writing the most extraordinary stories, and theirs was far from over. With their love, strength, and their remarkable family, the universe was theirs to explore, to shape, and to cherish. And they knew, deep in their hearts, that this was only the beginning of their extraordinary tale.